Welcome to the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform weekly community call. It is October 9th, 2024. My name is Sasa Juvonen. I'm a principal product manager in the Microsoft platform community areas and whatever comes to my fall on my table. Now, today we'll go through the basic setup of what's happening around Microsoft 365 Power Platform, what are the assets, all of that stuff. We'll go through some of the news. There was actually quite a lot of news this week from Microsoft across different areas. I'll call out at least 3 of them. And then we'll take a group photo together with everybody who is willing to enable their camera. That is roughly 12 to 15 past the hour. So if you're ready to go, you can enable your camera a few minutes before. And then we move to the actual demos of the actual stars of the day. We originally were planning to have 3 demos. Unfortunately, the 3rd demo was cancelled last night due to other reasons, but it's fine. That also means that the Steve and Bob has a bit more time on their sections, which is great, because I know that those demos are both looking incredibly good. Now, let me click here and double checking that Bob is also on the call. Excellent, as we were chatting before the call as well. Now, quick recap on all of the different assets which you have available to getting started in Microsoft 365 or within our community areas. We do repeat this in every single call, but there's always new people. There's always new people within this call. So we want to make sure that everybody has the baseline information so that they can start adapting or learning new capabilities within the Microsoft Cloud. First of all of our recordings of these community calls, all of the individual demos, a lot of other stuff is getting also published in the Microsoft 365 Microsoft Community Learning YouTube channel at AKMS Community YouTube. You want to subscribe there, you will get notified as the new videos are getting published. We do publish at least one video every single business day within the channel. Typically, it's much more than that. We'll have our LinkedIn page and group for discussions and updates. In LinkedIn, LinkedIn is growing a lot of popularity. If you're not in LinkedIn, you probably want to actually register and check out what's happening over there. And that seems to be now growing to be the social media platform where people are sharing work-related updates, which is great for sure. We have a lot of open source assets available across multiple different organizations within the GitHub, within PMP, SharePoint, Microsoft, and many other organizations. But as it might be a bit difficult to find a relevant sample what you're looking for, we do have this really cool sample gallery. So if you go to the AKMS community samples, you can actually find all of the different samples from community and Microsoft. Now, we are in the process of onboarding even more people here, calling out Steve, who's like, no, I want to have SharePoint embedded samples here. Yes, we're working on that one. Definitely it's going to happen for that one as well. So really kind of having a one location where all of the relevant samples of Microsoft 365, and not just code samples, we'll come back on that one a bit later today, are available from there. And if you're wondering that too many URLs to remember, I cannot help that. AKMS Community Home is the one URL where you can find all of the different things and references. You can find the calendar, which is automatically up to date, all of the recurrent invites and everything else. If you're watching this as a recording because you missed the daylight saving weirdness for this week, if you would have actually downloaded the recurrent invite, that would have been correctly within your calendar. So please do that. Now, we do have quite a lot of these community calls. We do have our Tuesday 8 a.m. Pacific time, which is the one where you're today. On top of that, we have 2 different monthly community calls. That's the Power Platform monthly community call, Office Analyst monthly community call. And then we have our 7 a.m. Pacific series on Thursdays, which is either the Microsoft 365 Power Platform community call or Viva Connection and SharePoint community call with community presenters. So typically Thursday series, community presenters. Tuesday series is more Microsoft presenters like today, where we have Steve and Bob taking care of the demos. All of the demos and calls can be found from AKMS community calls. And then we also have our meetup service, which is really cool. Where you can always check the agendas advance. So typically Wednesday, Thursday on the previous week, we always publish the agendas for following week. And if you subscribe in the meetup, you will get you will get an email actually on your inbox with the latest upcoming call details. So you know advance, do you want to schedule or do you want to be on person or in person within those calls. Now, for a lot of these calls, we do welcome community demos, a super important part of the community execution, what we do. So if you're interested in showcasing something, your journey, or you learn something new, or you just want to recap for the new people how to get started on using some product, that would be more than welcome. The most attendance and most views we have on the videos, which are 100 level getting started stuff. We're not expecting people to have rocket science stuff. Of course, if you have rocket science stuff, you can definitely sign up for a demo as well. And your demo doesn't have to be open source as well. The only kind of a requirement is that we do not welcome product demos. So this is not about selling a product. But if you want to tell a story, how did you build the product and how does it actually work, and what did you learn as part of that journey? That's a different perspective. So all of that is absolutely welcome as well. Now, we do have a lot of assets available to getting started in Microsoft Cloud. So we do have our Microsoft 365 developer program. There are some rules related on who are getting that tenant for free. So who people are qualified to get that free tenant. And then we do have a lot of modules available from the Microsoft Learn and new stuff on Copilot and AI and SharePoint Embedded coming there all the time as well. Now, coming back on the tenants, just recapping, previously the Microsoft 365 developer tenants were free. Unfortunately, free stuff always is a bit of a challenge because then the bad people start using those free stuff for a bad way. And there was a malicious people taking advantage of those tenants. So unfortunately, that program is still, it's still executing, but we no longer have free tenants. Now, if you want to make sure that you will have a tenant which you can use for development, which nobody will take away, it is the cost of $72 in a year. And you can use that tenant for your business. You can do that tenant for many other things as well. $72 in a year. It's a cost. We understand that. But if you're a developer, that's a 1 hour, less than a 1 hour invoiced money. So you can offload potentially that cost to the invoicing. So $72 in a year, free tenant, which will never be taken away from you. Not free tenant, paid tenant, which will never be taken away from you as long as you keep on paying for that. So that is a really nice option if you don't qualify for the free tenants otherwise from Microsoft. Now, we do have different Microsoft 365 Power Platform shows. The PMP Weekly, which actually update the slide, has been discontinued in the mid-September. Unfortunately, we did 555 episodes together with Waldeck, but then we needed to adjust a bit of our plans on that one. We're looking into establishing or restarting another show. We have a lot of ideas. The problem is always the timing. On top of that, there's Mondays to Microsoft with Caruana Heather happening bi-weekly on Mondays, and then the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast, which did actually have the latest episodes yesterday going live, so you probably want to check that one out. That was with Jeremy Fake and Andrew Connells talking about the Copilot stuff, so really cool stuff as well. Now, we did actually touch already the Microsoft 365 Power Platform Unified Sample Gallery. There's a lot of samples available there. We are actually evolving this. So we're looking into having, for example, filters related on no-code, low-code, or pro-code, and all of that there as well. So you can easily filter out on what you're looking. Are you looking for a script? Are you looking for a Copilot prompt, not a Copilot code? And you can easily actually find the relevant sample there. There's a lot of stuff. Main idea here is that you don't have to start from scratch. There's a lot of inspiration and ideas from this one centralized location. So please check it out, AKMS Community Samples. Now, as you find a sample, depending on what it is and where is it, and you might be wondering, how do I now start using this? This is in GitHub, or how would I actually share my samples to be available there? That's why we have Sharing is Caring initiative, and David Warner from our LA studios is going to recap on this one.
Yes, holy cow, everybody. All these amazing samples, you want to use them, you want to contribute to them, but you don't know how. Well, it lives in GitHub, and I know that Hub of Gits can be confusing. So we are here. Sharing is Caring is here to provide you that hands-on guidance. And what does that mean? It means we're going to join a live Teams call. We're going to walk you through making an actual contribution in GitHub. If you don't know what a pull request is, it's okay. Don't know what forking is, it's okay. Don't know what committing is, we're going to learn together. You're going to see how you can use the samples and contribute to the samples. And guess what? It is a contribution, which means that it counts towards your first contribution to the community. It is absolutely free, safe space, 100% unrecorded, so you can ask any and all questions. And it leads to this, the Community Recognition Program, which is our badge program, because you are amazing and we want to recognize all the work that you're doing. So we got tons of new fun badges. Prompt Pro, we're in the middle of Promptober, Hacktober, just a few days left to still get those. Refresh Rangers, SPFX Toolkit, and now back is our Slice of Samples and Season of Getting. Those are available now. Season of Getting starts in a few days. Slice of Samples available October to December. So if you've already made a contribution for this, you get your slice of what? Of samples. And of course, Season of Getting is coming up, everybody's favorite. So absolutely free to join this. We cover the cost, ak.ms/community/recognition. These are official and accredited badges, which means that you can show your management, you can show your clients, you're making a difference in the community. And it makes a big difference to them to know that you're well connected. So opt in, get involved, let's contribute together and make things awesome. Tessa, back to you in the Finland studios.
Excellent, LA. Thank you, LA and David. On that one, I really love the slice of samples, by the way. That is nicely designed badge. So awesome stuff. And Season of Getting is getting modernized as well. So great work there, David, as well. Awesome. Now, quick recap on all of the different events which are happening. Next week, we do have a really cool virtual event happening, which is the Microsoft 365 Copilot Developer Camp on November 7th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. This is a free online event. So if you go AKMS Copilot Dev Camp/live, you are able to register to the event and you can download the the invite to the event. So you can actually join that on the 7th of November next week. On top of that, we do have the Dallas TechCon 365 happening in November 11th to 15th. At TechCon365.com is the address to find more information on that. We also have Ignite coming on November 19th to 22nd at ignite@microsoft.com. The in-person experience for this one is already sold out, but it is actually free to join an online version of the Ignite. By the way, on 19th of November, on the Tuesday call, we will have a shared watch party for the Ignite keynote. And that's because the Ignite keynote is actually overlapping with our Tuesday call. There's no point competing with Satya Nadella, which makes sense. But of course, we would love to hear about the new stories on David, but we'll be here. We'll be sharing a lot of updates as well, but we'll be watching the show together and we can talk about what was the coolest thing, what we saw within the Ignite. Now, on top of that, we do have the European SharePoint conference coming up on early December, on the December 2nd to 5th. I'm just checking the dates are not here. Dates are not visible. I need to update the slide. And said December 2nd to 5th, this is happening in Stockholm. So that's a great option. Late bird tickets now available until October 31st. And then next spring, there is the ECS, the leading and the largest Microsoft event in Europe, happening in Düsseldorf from 26th to 28th of May. This time, it is a one community, but it's actually 3 different conferences happening at the same time. So European Collaboration Summit 2025, European AI and Cloud Summit 2025, and European Biz App Summit 2025. It's all happening at the same time, at the same venue, and it's going to be a really cool event. Now, on top of these kind of primary events, we have a lot of other events happening all around the world. So if you go to the communitydays.org, and that is a great listing for all of the different events which are happening all around the world. Quickly looking here, Miami, Germany, Richmond, Virginia, Texas, Florida, Oslo, and so on. So there's a lot of different things happening, and these are great opportunities to meet other people within the community. Some of them might have a small cost, some of them might be virtual, some of them might be in person. So please check out the details per event sites. Now, one great option also, which is super cool, related on SharePoint Embedded. We got this one included in here based on request last night or earlier today. So there is a new upcoming customer opportunity, which is the virtual 6-week engineering connection program. So if you're looking into building something with Microsoft SharePoint Embedded, this is a great option to have a 6 weeks in person, well, not in person, but online, but more getting together with engineering and building stuff together with engineering, and engineering helping you with the remote engagement on making things happen. So super cool option. At AKMS SPE/CCP sign up is the more details on that one. Really cool option for anybody who's looking into the Microsoft SharePoint Embedded. Now, quick recap on the news of the day, of this week. A lot of cool news. At least for me, the biggest news. A lot of cool stuff in Power Platform, a lot of cool stuff in development and Viva and all of that. But the big news is actually the new Microsoft Teams chat and channels experience. I've been using that for a while, and it's actually really cool. So at least for me, the big challenge has always been that if somebody mentions me in one of the chats, in one of the channels, in one of the hundreds of channels what we have in Microsoft, I will forget about it. And it's really, really hard to stay up to date on those things. And this change is addressing all of that. So you can make more efficiently follow up on all of the mentions, all of the tasks what you have within the Microsoft Teams, across the chats and across the channels, which looking forward on the feedback on that one. It's a really, 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 really cool option for sure. Now, we also wanted to talk about quickly about the Copilot prompts. This is a relatively new initiative run by Rabia Williams, one of our cloud advocates for Microsoft 365. Great options to look at to learn what you can do with Microsoft 365 Copilot. So we do have a repo, or you can use the sample gallery to find these examples. And this week's prompt of the week is coming from Valeras Narbutas. This is actually really, really cool. Somebody is not muted. Yes, we can hear you. What's happening in the office? Let's undo that. Thank you. So, the prompt of the week is coming from Valeras Narbutas on actually for the document library SharePoint site, analyze document sensitivity, propose permission levels, different groups, blah, 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 and basically making the Copilot to work on behalf of us based on the data and information what we have within the SharePoint list, which is a SharePoint library. Super cool option. An example of what you can do with the Microsoft Copilot. Now, before we then go to the actual stars of the day, let's do a quick group photo all together. Who are willing to enable the camera, I will flip into the together mode picture. Let's see if this was working for a moment. There we go. And thank you, Don, already waving in the background. I will flip the scene. Let's do some jungle chains today and do a Camtasia here. There we go. We are almost pixel perfect. This is looking really, really good. Where my Camtasia is actually starting. Let me try that one more time. So we can actually capture the screen and there, and then I will enable the capturing in that screen. And I think we are good to go. I'm not in there yet. So let me actually enable the video as well. Let's see if, I got to be there in the screen as well. Excellent. I think we're good to go. Let me put the recording on and we can see the 3, 2, 1. Going 3, 2, 1. Let's do some hand waving, everybody. Thank you for joining. Yay! We're going to capture a GIF animation out of this and share that in the social media. It's a bit captured. The refresh rate is not awesome today, but we'll capture a GIF animation out of that for sure. Thank you for joining. Good to see the smiling faces always on this calls, and thank you for enabling the camera. Always fun thing to gather. Thank you for that. Cool. Then it's time to go to the actual stars of today. So today we'll start with Steve Pucelik talking about building a SharePoint embedded center of excellence, a solution with Power Platform, really, really cool solution, which is, by the way, open source, and Steve is going to share that. And then we're going to move on hands-on experiences on building declarative agents with API plugins. But Steve first, and then we move to Bob after that.
All right, thanks, Besa. I'm going to go ahead and take the screen from you.
Yep, absolutely.
Very good.
And I can see the screen, and let's move to presentation mode, and we are good to go.
Here we go. Yes, sir. All righty. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Steve Pucelik. I am a product manager on the SharePoint embedded team. And what we're going to do today is walk through a bit of an overview of SharePoint Embedded. So if you're not familiar with SharePoint Embedded, we'll give you the nickel tour on what a container is, what files are, where we see valid use cases to use that. Then we're going to move into a demo on a Power Platform solution that I put together. As you can imagine, demoing an API is not very sexy. So this is where we put together a quick tutorial on what it looks like from a presentation perspective, but also using that as a starter kit to get going with your own Power Platform solution. All right. For those of you that are not familiar with SharePoint Embedded is an API-only headless SharePoint. So think of a single site collection with a single document library that makes up those containers that hold files. The use case that we normally see is if you're creating a Power Platform app and you're hooking it up to a document library, somebody comes into your document library, starts messing with the metadata, starts deleting files because they have access to that interface, your app breaks. And that obviously is not a good thing. So what we're doing is we're removing that UI portion. It's a bring your UI scenario here, and allowing you to interact with the graph components to do what you want to within your application, control the user experience. But if you're storing documents as part of that user experience, nobody wants to create a document management system because SharePoint is fantastic at doing that. Let's use that goodness within our custom application. So that's where we have the ability to have all the document management capabilities, co-authoring, version control, permissions. We've got the ability to have Copilot integrated within that SharePoint embedded experience, Purview integration, all the goodness that you're expecting in that M365 environment, you're going to get within that SharePoint embedded environment. Okay. Overview of some of the features that we normally see. Again, from a content AI perspective, yes, we do have OCR on images, much like same thing that you would have within a syntax environment in a document library. All the Purview integration, so sensitivity labels, retention policies, use it for e-discovery, audit logging, all that good stuff. Collaboration is probably the best #1 feature that we see customers requesting is when you are in your custom application and you want to co-author, you want to @mention somebody, within the graph endpoint, we'll show you exactly what that looks like. Simply drop that in as a hyperlink into your application. It launches the Office experience, and you're doing Office experience there. Nothing that needs to be done on the developer perspective to enable that. And then from a storage perspective, again, because you can have up to 25 million documents in a container, create as many containers as you need to support your application, tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands, that's fine. We get all of that redundancy and throughput within the SharePoint embedded environment. All right, so I'm going to quickly move to a bit of plumbing on what it takes to create an environment, and then we are going to go into that environment. First thing that you need to do to get started with SharePoint Embedded is that app registration in Azure. Go and create a typical app registration. That allows you to assign the Graph API permissions that you need to access the files, control permissions into that container. That also allows you to get that bearer token. This is going to be pretty big here in a second as we authenticate into those Graph APIs, get those responses so that we can use it within our application. Once you have that, now you're in business of managing containers within the SharePoint embedded environment. Again, that container where you hold your files. Think of it as a document library, very synonymous with that. But you can have more than 100,000 containers if you need to, each container holding that 25 million documents to support your application. And then everything is based on those Graph API calls that we're going to see here in just a second, and built on all of the governance and configuration that you have in your tenant today. So if you've got MFA, conditional access set up, great. SharePoint Embedded is going to respect that, apply that business logic, and oh, by the way, let's include some governance there so that we can make sure that everything is compliant within your environment. Okay. All right, so I am going to jump out of the deck. We are going to get into what does this stuff look like. And first thing I'm going to do is walk through an overview of what the Power Platform app does, and then we're going to back into the plumbing on how things come together. So as I mentioned, demoing an API, not very sexy, but if we start to use the Power Platform and those graph endpoints to surface not only the containers that we have in our environment, but also what are the operations that we're going to do on those containers. And this is going to be normal activity that you would do when you're creating your own custom application to do whatever it is you need to do. You need to create containers. Create a container, give it a name, who's going to own the container. That gets created, and you'll be able to see that in the SharePoint Admin Center. Deleting a container does what you think it does, puts it back in the recycle bin for 93 days. Again, in the SharePoint Admin Center, bring it back if you made a mistake and need to put that back into production. Manage permission. Container properties. So think of container properties as the property bag within a site collection. Okay, so this is where you can assign a specific property to that container and now use that as a managed property to search on it later on. So that's pretty slick. If you've ever worked with a site property or bag to try and manage some chargebacks or organize your site collections, SharePoint Embedded has that figured out. All right, moving on to files. So the heart and soul of the SharePoint Embedded environment, adding, deleting all of the CRUD operations that you would imagine with files, organize those as you see fit. So if you need to upload a file, upload a file. If you need to switch containers, because now I've got a number of projects that I'm managing in this case. Each project has its own set of documents. Fantastic. Manage the permission, share out this document with somebody internally or externally so that they can collaborate on that with you. Full support for that as well. You'll notice that I'm simply clicking on that file. It's opening it in the Office web experience. That's it. There's no plumbing that needs to happen from a developer configuration perspective. That is just going to happen for free, and I will show you exactly how that happens for free here in just a second. Okay. Lastly, we're going to talk through search. So search is very similar to the, I don't multitask very well here, so I'm going to do here. We're going to do a search. So searching works very similar to the SharePoint search. It is part of the SharePoint search index, but it is isolated so that the items that are in SharePoint Embedded are hidden, if you will. There's a PowerShell command to switch that if you want it in the M365 experience. But a managed property is a managed property. A full text search is a full text search. And you can see that I've got image PDFs that I was able to do the OCRing on and return those search results. So again, very, very controlled. You display what you want to in that user experience. Okay. Alrighty, so let's back into some of the plumbing on how things were created. So from a, let's see here, where did, there we go. All right, so from a SharePoint Admin Center perspective, when you create those containers, you'll notice that you're going to see your containers in the SharePoint Admin Center. There is some functionality that you can use around that. But from the Power Platform perspective, and this is getting in my way. Yep. Now I did it. Okay. So now, when we create that Azure container, this is, or the app registration, this is where you're going to assign the appropriate permissions. So that file storage container selected is going to be the one that we're going to grab onto. And then you're going to create that authentication secret. So the secret and the secret value, that is what's going to be used within our solution to authenticate in and make those API calls. So all of that is configured within the Azure environment. Once we have that completed, on the Power App side, or in the Power Platform side, what I did is I created a solution. So the solution has all of the components that we need. The environment variables being the important ones here. This is where set your environment variables, use those within your Power Automate to make those calls. That is where I've contained those. And as you import the solution into your environment, you'll be prompted for your environment specific things, client ID, secret, tenant, and so forth. Okay. All right. So from the Power App perspective, nothing more than a few screens. So you will see that, that the screens that I had presented earlier, this is where I'm focusing on the entry point and the gallery. So nothing different from a Power Platform perspective. If I wanted to create a container in this case, you'll notice that within the container screen, I've got a bunch of hidden containers. Boy, I'm using container a lot, am I? So within Power Platform, containers are holding all of the functionality to do that appropriate CRUD action. So in this case, I'm just toggling them on and off so that depending on what the user selects, create the container, prompt them to input the right information, and so forth. But if I go down to, let's take a look at files here really quick. So if I go down to files, then this is where nothing more than a gallery that's feeding the files, but I'm feeding in that collection of information to populate the gallery. And where we're doing that is if we select the containers, so the onChange event for that dropdown is going to fire, and that's where we're making the call out to Power Automate, get my files, passing in that container ID. So remember, I can have multiple containers, and each container having those 25 million documents. This is where I want to focus on specifically which container do I want to get the results from. I'm going to return that JSON result. We'll take a look at that here in a second. And I'm doing nothing more than walking the JSON tree to extract the appropriate information. Okay? So let's look at that specifically. If I go to, here is my Power Automate. So my Power Automate is doing nothing more than going out to that endpoint. So if I look at this endpoint, here's my endpoint that I'm going to drive. So all of that's always going to be the same. This is my container ID. So when I create that new container, that ID is what I'm going to be keeping track of. All I'm doing is getting the items out of that container and expanding all of those fields. What's going to be returned to me is that JSON output. So that is the XML, or I'm sorry, the JSON that we are going to take a look at here in a second. And once I have that response, let's go to here, right? So this is the response that I'm going to get from SharePoint Embedded. You'll notice that under the value section, this is where I have all of my metadata or property information for the files in that container. Okay? Calling attention to specifically that web URL. So remember I mentioned earlier that all you have to do is click on the hyperlink and it will launch you into that Office experience. That one URL will do that. So we decorate that. Let me see if I can get over a little bit further here. Yeah, it's not liking that. So all we need to do is drop that hyperlink into our application. It has all of the goodness to expand that and throw us into that Office experience. Okay. So once I return that, that is where I'm simply setting the collection values on that JSON response and populating that in my gallery. I do that over and over and over, all over the place, because once you're getting that JSON response, all we're doing is parsing it and then populating the appropriate object that is in our screen. Okay? So that is a bit of a nutshell on how that portion works. You'll notice that the endpoints are all going to be published and focused on that file storage or drive items. Those are the main endpoints that we're going to start to focus on. Then passing in that container type. Again, that's the environment variable that you're going to establish once you have created the container within the SharePoint Admin Center. That allows you to create, again, as many containers as you want to, simply making that HTTP call. And in this case, I'm sending that as an endpoint, passing in all of my environment variables so that I can reuse those, manage those in one place. And then when I respond back to the Power App, all I'm doing is including that HTTP response that goes back and allows me to parse that JSON, put it into a collection, put it into an object that's in the Power App so that I can use that going forward. Okay. So again, all of the HTTP responses are encapsulated. They're all using the environment variables that we have. And within the Power App itself is where I'm going and using that parsed JSON, put that into a table so that I can use that other places. When I initially fire the application, that's when I'm going to establish not only some fonts and some spacing and just some initial plumbing on how we're going to navigate the menu, but I'm also going and getting a list of those containers. So I'm going to store that as a environment collection, using that in a number of different places. If I need to refresh that because I've added a new container, great. But you'll notice again, I'm parsing that JSON, walk in the JSON tree to pull out the information that I need to, and that allows me to populate that information automatically. Okay? So I will pause there. I have not been monitoring the chat window because I don't multitask very well, but if there are thoughts or questions, more than happy to field some of those now.
There's quite a lot of long chats in here, and super cool. A lot of people excitement on the things. Can you share one more time on where is this in GitHub? How do people can then find this sample and more details on the SharePoint embedded?
Yep, I'll put the AKA in the chat window now.
Excellent.
And aka.ms/spe-samples. There is a Power Platform fork that you can download the solution and put it into your environment as we saw.
Yep, this is really, really cool. Awesome stuff.
Good.
I guess from a timing perspective, let's double check on what's in the chat. I don't think there's anything which we haven't really missed as such, but please do contain yourself. Just.
Very good. Yeah,
Thank you, Sanford, on that one.
Yeah, I'll monitor that as well. So yeah, I'll kind of stick on base and walk through that as well. But yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. Really, really cool stuff, and awesome demo, and awesome scenario as well. Then it's time to move to Bob and Copilot Studio agents, API plugins, something like that, right, Bob?
Everything except for the studio part. So
that's true. That is true.
Nothing against it, but this is the pro dev type of scenario, and I'll just take the screen. So I'm not exactly sure how to do this, but what I want to do is kind of walk you through the hands-on labs. I think you have seen a lot of these demos if you've been on these calls, but thank you, David. David just put the URL into the chat. What you're looking at is Copilot Developer Camp, and this is a virtual workshop that you can do if you want to do some of the demos that you've seen my teammates and I do. You can actually do this yourself using this virtual workshop and learn all about declarative agents and custom engine agents, building them with code. So if you like, if you're not intimidated by editing like a JSON file, right? Some of them are that simple that all you have to do is edit a JSON file. If you like collaborating with your team and allowing more than one person to edit the solution at the same time, if you like the idea of GitHub and being able to use your existing software development lifecycle, this is the solution for you. This is where you would want to go to build Copilot agents. So that's what this is all about. I'll just sort of introduce you to the site. Up at the top, we've got a promo for our November 7th event, and I'll just sort of drop that into the chat as well, because this is great collaborative, totally. Please register for this and join us on November 7th. We're going to go a lot deeper, and it'll be kind of fun because we've got some interviews with some of our executives. Rob Howard will be there. Donna Sarkar will be there. We'll have Jeremy Thake, as well as a lot of the usual suspects from my team, from the advocacy team. So I encourage you to check that out. It's a 90-minute free virtual experience. But then this announcement will go away probably on November 8th, right? After that, there's a little preview here a review of Wave 2 of Copilot. So if you're not sure what is an agent anyway, and what are they talking about, and I thought I understood this, and they just changed the names of things, this is a great intro. This is where Satya Nadella and Jared Spataro introduced Wave 2. A lot of this was end user content, but they introduced the idea of agents. And then we go deeper in these videos. So there's a video on kind of how to start and even decide what type of agent do you want. And then deeper dives on custom engine agents, declarative agents, and API plugins for declarative agents. And then comes the cool part, is the hands-on labs. So what I'm going to review today for you is this extend path, where you're taking the AI that's inside of Microsoft 365, and building agents using that AI. So you don't have to, you've already paid a license. You don't have to do that again. You don't have to buy another AI license. You can, but you don't have to, right? You can build a more tailored experience using declarative agents, and that's what I'll walk you through today. Next week, we're going to have Aicha Bash come on the same call and talk about custom engine agents where you build your own. So I'm not going to go into that today. Here's the metaphor I use. Suppose you walk into a building and there's somebody at the front desk, and if you say, like, I've got an appointment, where should I go? They'll tell you. But if you say, I have a question about our HR benefits. Could you tell me the paternity leave policy in Australia? Right? They're going to say, what are you talking about? Or you have to word your question exactly right, because even if Copilot has access to all that information, it's got a huge universe of possible content to look at to answer your question. So people are familiar with this idea of talking to an expert, somebody who focuses just on HR benefits in this example. That's what your declarative agent's doing. Or any of these agents, it's providing a tailored experience specific to a certain domain within your organization. And with these labs, you're going to learn how to do it. So I'm going to come back and walk through them and show you kind of what you get out of each lab. But I'll quickly show off that we've got more videos here. And then Copilot Camp in a Box. So suppose you want to do these presentations locally. You want to do it for your user group, for inside your company. We've provided all of the PowerPoint slides and even recorded demos of every one of these approaches in labs. And so that's here for you to download. And this is already getting used quite a bit. We've got some discussions, and I'm happy to announce that my teammates have built some really cool Microsoft Learn modules. So it's another, and I'll put the link here. We've gone ahead and posted that here, and we intend to kind of keep this homepage as sort of a summary of all the learning experiences that are available to you as they come out on building Copilot agents. And I'll point out one other thing about this before we go into the labs, is that this is actually hosted in the same GitHub repo. So if you click up here, you'll actually land in the GitHub repo where you can submit issues, pull requests, join the discussions, and of course, all of the solution files are here. So what I'm about to walk you through is all these solutions. Every one of them has the completed lab is right here in case you need it. So let's go back and look at the actual lab list. And what I'd like to do is just quickly talk about each one. So Lab E0 is where you set up your environment, and we'll walk you through. We're using Visual Studio Code with Node.js. So it's cool because it runs on PC, Mac. It probably runs on Linux. I haven't had a chance to test it, but it's tools that work everywhere and that are all free. And then you'll build your first declarative agent. And so if I go into that lab, you'll see that you can kind of follow along as you go, right? And you can also see all the steps right here at the top. And as you go through the labs, so here we're building the Trade Genie, right? And you're going to learn, we've been pretty liberal about putting in more instructional content. You can skip over some of this if you don't want to, but we really wanted to make a full learning experience. So you're going to get these special notes, detailed, and Robbie Williams wrote this, and she did a fabulous job of providing more details. And then you finally that you're supposed to do something when you see the steps begin, right? So we're going to first install Teams Toolkit. When you finish, maybe you're going to do this over the period of a few days, right? When you finish, there's a little checkbox. Click. That will give you a little encouragement. It'll also keep track of where you are. So if I go back to the top, you'll see that it's checked off the step, right? Now, if I want to go to the next step, I just click on it and they all hyperlink. So just kind of helping you to navigate through these labs becomes a lot easier with those capabilities. Everything, tons of screenshots, tons of details. At the end of Lab E1, you will have the geolocator game, which you've seen demoed on some of our calls. If you missed it, I'll just quickly spin it up. This is a declarative agent that uses files in SharePoint and instructions. So it's really simple. If you can edit a JSON file and write a prompt, you already have the skills to do this, right? So great there. And this one started with Aicha writing like a 4-line game that is kind of amazing in its succinctness. But then Rabia kind of turbocharged it with some scoring and some special games that are more advanced that you can play based on the SharePoint contents and other stuff. I actually enjoy playing this game. It's not just a demo, right? It's actually really cool. And it's funny because it usually starts with something in Europe that's known for its rich history and usually it's a maritime climate, right? It's often a different city. A lot of cities in Europe have this capability or those attributes. So anyway, lots of fun. I encourage you to check that out and to build it yourself, right? Then the next one, if I kind of scroll down, is Lab E2. So in this lab, you're going to build an API. Why? Because you really, to really make the richest declarative agent, you want to have an API behind it. So what you'll build is an Azure function that looks kind of like this. It's got a few entry points. So it's got /me. So get information about me, get information to consulting scenario. So it's trade research, which is one of the specially trademarked legal to use fictitious companies that Microsoft has. You can get information about consultants and about projects. And if you want to try it, right, this exercise will actually, bring you into an HTTP file where you can actually test the request and just see, well, if I click /me, what do I get? I get all the information about me, which until you get to the lab on authentication is going to be a fictitious user, Avery Howard. And you can charge time to your projects. You can do all these things. So this just allows you to familiarize yourself with the API and just make sure that it's all working. One really cool thing about this that another one of my teammates, Gary Trinder, kind of taught me how to do, and now I use it in a lot of my projects, is that this uses Azure Table Storage under the covers, and it actually spins up a storage emulator called Azurite, which means when you're debugging locally, you actually have a real database so if you bill your hours, it's actually going to remember that you billed your hours the next time you come back to the lab. Even if you shut off your machine, everything is there. It's not just in memory. It's really being stored for you, which I think is pretty cool. And hats off to Gary for coming up with that. So the next lab, so it's like, the thing is that you kind of have to do this to get to the next step. So it's really more of an Azure Functions thing than a Copilot thing. And you know what? You could really use the API. You don't have to use Azure Functions. It's just the easy way to do it because Teams Toolkit gets it and immediately stands it up. Then you add a declarative agent. So you're going to create a SharePoint site and put that with some more documents about the trade research projects, upload those, and then you're going to connect an API. So what I can do with this is I can actually say, well, find consultants with TypeScript skills, and let's make it a little bit more who are available now, right? So I really want it to not only query on the skills, but also on the availability. And so a fair amount of effort went into this to make it kind of realistic-ish. Like, we put in enough data that you can actually see it's kind of getting useful. Like, I often, when I was doing consulting, would try to find somebody with a certain skill. And yet, if I had a long list from the search results, I wouldn't know who was available. I wouldn't know where they were, right? I can do things like say, who is closer to the Contoso project. And, this would probably be me going through each one and trying to figure it out. And I don't know why this isn't happening for me, but let's try again. And it will actually go and look up the project, look up the location of the two consultants, and show me a map and tell me that really it is Avery who is closer, right? And so pretty nice, and definitely showing that the AI is doing more than a traditional search engine. So the only problem with this is that at this point, we've kind of handed you the packaging. You've just copied and pasted the packaging for the declarative agent and the plugin, which is a bit complex. It requires a Swagger file. It requires an open API definition, a plugin file, all these things. So in Lab 4, you're going to add a new feature to the API. So my goal on this one was, I didn't really want you to have to learn how to talk to Azure Table Storage and program Azure functions, because although those are useful things to know, this is a Copilot lab. But I did want you to have to go in and get and learn about the packaging files. So rather than ask people to start from scratch, what we did here was we added a new path to the API, which is for projects. So initially you can't ask about projects. That third prompt wouldn't have worked. And you actually go through all of the packaging files and add the little bits that you need for project management, right? So now you're going to actually be forced to go and visit all those files and learn how it works so that you can, build your own. After that, we add adaptive cards. And adaptive cards are really fun. And of course, there's a video. And then you come in here and add these to the packaging so that Copilot knows how to respond. You saw the adaptive card when I ran it a minute ago. That's not initially there, or you get this kind of ugly default card that doesn't have very much information. You'll learn how to actually use the adaptive cards designer and build them so that they look like what you want them to look like. Every request, which they call operations or functions inside of Copilot, right? Which is basically every type of API request. You can put different adaptive cards. So somebody asks a question, they get one about a consultant, they get a consultant adaptive card. They bill their hours, they get an hours billed adaptive card that confirms what happened, right? So you get to find all that out. And then finally, the big one, in a way, is to add Entra ID authentication. And the reality is, any API that you would use is almost certainly going to be authenticated, right? I mean, we're all, unless you're building something for public use, maybe you've got an API for the transit system in your city. That might be public. But most APIs have some kind of authentication in them. And so that's what you're going to learn in this lab. You're going to learn to set up, and this one I'm kind of overhauling right now, so it works, but there's an easier way. And so Teams Toolkit has improved their tooling, and I think we can get this down to an F5 experience where you just click F5 and it all works. And then we'll have an optional exercise to go and see all the things that it created for you so that you actually know how to put it into production, or maybe maybe you want to write a script to do this in a different environment, that kind of thing. There's bicep files involved. We'll walk you through all that in the review, but right now everything gets set up manually, so you totally know how it works. It's just kind of a little bit more cumbersome. So that's Copilot Camp, and I'm glad to answer questions. I think my big call to action is to join us in the live stream on November 7th. I'll put the URL one more time, and then I'll see if we've got some questions that I can answer.
I think Jim has a great question there. What is the requirement from licensing perspective to go through the labs, just to set the expectations?
Yeah. No, great question. So they all require Microsoft 365 Copilot. No, that's not true, actually. Okay, Extend Copilot, the Extend labs that I just showed, require Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's it. Now, you didn't ask what permissions do you need, because you also need you need permission to sideload applications, which is off by default. And you need, let's see, what else do you need? For the auth lab, you need the ability to register and consent to Entra ID applications. That's not like a global admin thing. It's a couple of Entra permissions, but they are a bit sensitive, so you might not want to do that in production. Then for build your own agent, I guess we'll double check with Aicha on this, but right at the moment, I believe what you need there is Azure AI Studio. So you're going to need Azure licenses. You're going to, of course, need Microsoft 365. However, you can run them in Teams without the Copilot license, at least at the moment. So that's one where you could, if you have Azure access, you could set that up with just an M365 Copilot. So that is a great question. I know, as Vesa said earlier, a lot of us on the inside of Microsoft are lobbying to find a solution to the fact that people abused the free program, and this is why we can't have nice things, right? And they're trying to get some kind of a program, and I don't know what the deal will be, because I know the cost of hosting Copilot is also expensive. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but hopefully it will get easier and less expensive over time.
Yeah, and of course, we would love to give everybody, we said this many times, for free, the developer tenants and extensibility tenants, everything else. The challenge is really the fact that what if we give a developer tenant away with the Copilot, then people would be using that also for non-development scenarios. And those are really the problematic things what people are trying to figure out. So how do we do that for right reasons and give away the right free stuff for everybody to be able to be successful within the age of AI, like we're saying that. Excellent, excellent. From a timing perspective, I guess it's time to start closing up for today. Thank you. Great demos, awesome demos by Steve and Bob. Really, really cool stuff. Luckily, we didn't have 3 demos today because we would have been actually rushing. So that was really good to have 2. Every now and then we might have 3 in the future as well. Let's see how that goes. Next week, we're looking into having similar kind of topics as today, which is interesting by coincidence this time. But on 5th of November, Mark Windel is going to drop by to talk about the latest on SharePoint Embedded updates, so what's happening there, recapping assets and the latest development. All up, exact details will be defined on next Tuesday. And then Aisha is going to talk about building custom engine Copilots with Teams AI Library and Azure AI Studio. So really, again, a different perspective. Not extending the Copilot, you are creating a custom Copilot. So that's a different perspective, and that's when Teams AI Library is useful. But Aisha is going to go through that on next Tuesday. Really, really, really cool stuff. Looking forward on that one. Now, in the meanwhile, and we do have community calls coming up later this week as well. So we do have our Thursday community call, 7 a.m. Pacific time. Again, if you are based in Europe, this week is the weird week within a year where Europe moved already to winter time, so to say, and US moves next weekends. And that's why this week, every single call might be impacted depending on where you are within the world. But in the outside of the community calls, we have a lot of other things to, what we're offering. Also, the Discord server is a great option. There's already 2,300 members there helping with the questions and all of that actively. So if you are in Discord, great option to get involved. We are always looking also feedback. We would love to get your insights on the value of this course. So are these useful? Or should we be continuing doing this in the future? All of your input has a lot of value for our leadership to show that this is something what people should be doing also in the future for keeping you up to date on what's happening within these areas. But quick recap, recording will be available within 24 hours at the Microsoft Community Learning YouTube channel at the AKMS Community YouTube. Subscribe that channel and you will get notified then whenever new videos are available. There's a lot of content there, a lot of cool stuff every single day getting released. Follow-ups on Twitter or in LinkedIn, easiest way to stay up to date on what's happening. And the next call, as mentioned, is November 5th on this series. community call, community demos on Thursdays this week. But that's it for now. All of the calls that they came as community calls and a lot of other stuff there as well. Please keep the feedback coming. We are building all of these capabilities and features for you. So please let us know what works, what doesn't work, where you need more guidance and so on. Your feedback truly matters. But I guess that's it for today. Thanks everybody for joining. Let's stay in touch and stay safe and have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.